Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Sarah, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to crochet this little bee. Now if you don't need any of this dialogue, go ahead and skip to the next chapter. I'll have the chapters at the bottom of the screen so you can skip ahead. So in today's video I will be giving you this pattern, but also I'll be showing you how I color change if I crochet the colors back and forth several times. Now I did do an episode in my crochet foundation series on how I color change, but this is, like I said, more specifically crocheting back and forth between the colors. A quick disclaimer, I do crochet pretty quickly, so if you need to, make sure you slow down the video, replay, pause. If you have any questions, leave them in the description. And then the final thing before we get into it is that this pattern is free on my Instagram. It will be pinned on my profile, at least for a little while. So if you are interested in the written pattern instead, it will be linked in the description. All that said, let's go ahead and get into the material list. For the materials, we're going to need 3 yarn colors. Now I'm using Big Twist Baby Bear. I don't know how this yarn is going to fare over the next few months because of everything going on with Joann's, so you may or may not be able to get this yarn. I'm honestly not sure, but you do not have to use the yarn I'm using. You can use any yarn type as long as you use the correct crochet hook with it. Now you'll need 3 shades of this color. You'll need some white for the wings, and then a primary color and a secondary color. In this case I'm just doing yellow and brown, kind of like a regular bee, but you could go crazy and use any color you want. I choose to embroider my eyes, so I'm going to be using some black to embroider them, but feel free to grab some safety eyes if you would like. You will need a pair of scissors, a sewing needle. This is a no-sew pattern, but you will need the sewing needle to close up the hole when we are finished. And then you'll also need your crochet hook. In this case, I'm using a 3.5mm hook. You will need some stuffing. Almost forgot that one, as usual. Let's go ahead and get started. So you're going to start with your primary color. In this case, I'm going to be using yellow. And you're going to use your magic ring or your chain 2 method, whatever method you use to start your round. They're all interchangeable, so go ahead and use whichever. I'll just be using the magic ring for today. And I have a slower version of how I do the magic ring in the description for you. It's part of my crochet foundation series. So if you need any assistance with most of these techniques, I do have them in that series. So once you have your magic ring, we're going to single crochet into that magic ring 6 times. And now I have 6, so I'm going to go ahead and close up my circle or ring, or whatever you choose to call it. And then for round 2, I'm going to increase in each stitch. So the increase is 2 single crochets into the next stitch. And here's the end of round 2. Now, if you require a stitch marker, you can go ahead and grab them, but this is the final stitch count for the whole piece. Let's go ahead and do round 3. We're going to single crochet in each stitch around. Here's the end of the single crochet round. I'm going to go ahead and secure my inside end really quick. Now, if you've never seen this before, I highly recommend you do this technique. It just keeps your magic ring or your chain 2 method from coming loose. And how I do this is I thread my needle. I go ahead and just pick up one random loop, and I create another loop, and I slip my needle under that. And then I repeat this at least twice. Sometimes I'll do this 3 times. And this way, this back end is knotted and it's not going to come undone too easily. So once that's done, I turn my work right side out again, and we're going to pick up where we left off. Now, here's where we get into the color changing stuff. So if you're following along for just the technique, this is where it begins. So now I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch into the next stitch. Then we'll chain 1 and we'll pull up a loop. Now this loop shouldn't be too big. If it's too big, it's going to get in your way, but it also shouldn't be too small because you don't want it to come out while we are working. Now the other thing is you could always stick a stitch marker onto this loop so you don't lose it. If you're doing a bigger project, I do recommend doing that so that you don't lose that loop, because we're gonna leave it loose. We're not gonna do anything else. What I'm gonna do is insert my hook into the stitch next to the slip stitch. This is the slip stitch right here, so I'm gonna insert my hook into the stitch next to it. Now, using my secondary color, in this case this light brown, I'm just going to put it right over my hook and pull it through that stitch. So now I'm going to single crochet right on top of that next slip stitch. And you want to kind of keep things a little bit loose. You don't want to hold your yarn too tight, but you also don't want to be too loose. So kind of find a happy medium. And now we're just going to single crochet in each stitch around. Now, if this color change method doesn't work for you, feel free to use a different one, but I prefer this method when it comes to making stripes, and it keeps the color change pretty clean. So once you come all the way back around, you're gonna have that stitch where you pulled up a loop in, and we're actually gonna single crochet in that stitch. Because this loop we pulled up, I like to count it, how I think about it is this is the top of the next single crochet. So whatever is done in the loop over here, it doesn't count, it counts towards this stitch. So hopefully that makes sense, but just make sure you single crochet where we originally pulled up that loop. And now what I'm gonna do is slip stitch in the next stitch and chain one and pull up a loop, just like we did with the yellow. And here you can see we have our two ends in our two loops. So now what we're gonna do is insert our needle into the stitch next to the slip stitch. This is the exact same process, but instead we're gonna put our loose loop of our primary color, so in this case yellow, onto the hook. And we're gonna pull it, not too tight. You don't want it to be completely tight. You want it to be a little bit loose. What we're gonna do is we're going to yarn over and pull through both of these loops on our hook. So the stitch and then that loop. And now our yellow yarn is secure again and we can crochet with it. So I'm gonna single crochet into that slip stitch. I'm gonna pull that loop back and around so it's behind, and then single crochet in each stitch. And in the exact same way as the previous round, we are going to single crochet into that same stitch where we pulled up a loop. And now, also in the same way, we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch, chain one, and pull up a loop. So now we're going to repeat that process that we just did with the brown yarn. And this is the final time we'll be doing this with the brown yarn. So go ahead and put your loose loop onto your hook, and then using your working end, pull it tight, not too tight, yarn over, pull through all of those loops, and then single crochet into the slip stitch. Pull all that yarn to the back and then single crochet around. And once you come all the way around, make sure you place that single crochet into that stitch where we pulled up a loop. And now we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch, chain one, and instead of pulling up a loop, we're just going to go ahead and fasten off with this color. So you just need a short end, doesn't need to be too long, and you can pull it up and close that chain to create a knot. And here's what we're looking like so far. We have our 3 stripes, and we have one last color change to finish. So what we do, right next to the slip stitch, insert your hook and pull this, put this loop on your hook and pull it closed, not too tight, and then go ahead and pull through all those loops on your hook and then single crochet into the slip stitch. So now we're just going to go ahead and single crochet all the way around, just like every other round before it. And then once you get back to the beginning, place your single crochet into that stitch where we pulled up a loop. And now what I like to do is single crochet into that next stitch and pretend like this isn't part of the next round. I like to do this because it prevents the decreases, which is our next round, from looking too strange on top of that color change. I'm going to pull up a loop and pull the yellow yarn up. Now feel free to use a stitch marker to secure this end because we're going to be adding the wings next. Now you can add the wings when the bee is finished, but I personally prefer to add the wings now. That way I can pull it inside out and secure all the ends, and then I don't have to weave anything in when we're finished. Here's what our bee is looking like so far. You can see where the color change happened. One, it looks a lot better than most color changes that I've used, but then also we're going to be putting our wings on top of here so we can cover them right up. But if you go all the way around, it looks fairly nice for a color change. Usually color changes don't look so nice. I'm pretty proud of this technique. I also use this technique to make the raccoon tail in my raccoon tutorial, but that video, I believe, if my memory serves correctly, that it's muted. If you do the raccoon tail, this is the exact same process, but obviously with me talking and explaining as we go. So now we're gonna go and use our white yarn for the wings, and we're gonna create a slip knot onto our hook, just a super basic knot with the tiny little end. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna hold our bee. This is the front, so it's gonna be facing that way. And I'm gonna go ahead and slip stitch between that middle single crochet round, the yellow round for me. And we're gonna just, like I said, slip stitch right into this stitch, chain 2, and place 3 double crochets into this single crochet stitch. And then once you have 3 double crochets, go ahead and chain 2 and slip stitch into the same stitch. Now this is gonna be a really tight squeeze, but you'll get it, I'm sure you will. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn our work so it's facing the complete opposite direction. And into that next stitch, we're actually going to place a slip stitch, chain 2, double crochet into that stitch 3 times, just like with the previous wing. And then finally we will chain 2, and then we will slip stitch into the same stitch. And here we have our set of wings. So go ahead and chain 1 and fasten off, leaving a short end. And now what I like to do is just with my crochet hook, pull these ends through. So I'll take my hook into the inside and pull it right through pretty much anywhere. If I notice that my wings are kind of a little crooked, I'll usually pull it through on the far side. That way they kind of straighten out a little bit. So now I'm going to turn this piece inside out. It can be a little difficult depending on your yarn type, but this is just so you can secure all these ends, so it is worth it. And then the wings fit perfectly inside, so it works pretty well. But if you're curious, this is what the inside of the color work looks like. We have almost like this chain situation on the inside. So the seam is a little bulky, but for a plushie, it works. I'm going to take these 2 ends from the wing and just do some simple knots, tie them together. Super tight. And then I'm going to take the brown ends because they are not secured, at least our first loop isn't, and I'm just going to tie a couple knots. Now this one you don't want to pull too tightly because you don't want to misshape the plushie. And when you're finished, just go ahead and turn it right side out. Now I'm going to go ahead and shove all these ends in here so they're completely out of my way. And now we're going to do our final round, and this final round is just decreasing 6 times. So go ahead and put your hook back on, your loop back on your hook, and just decrease 6 times. I'm using the invisible decrease, but you can use any decrease. And then about halfway through this round, I like to stuff. Feel free to stuff before decreasing or after, whichever works best for you. I like to stuff mine pretty firm. Also, I forgot to mention, so I will edit this and put this earlier in the video, but if you want, you can add safety eyes as well, but I prefer to embroider the eyes, which you can also embroider the eyes before closing everything up as well, but I just prefer to do these all at once and then embroider them later all together. That is what I will be doing, but I'm going to finish my decreases. I got 3 left. Now that I'm done with my decreases, I'm going to slip stitch, chain 1, and fasten off. You just need a long enough end to close the bottom hole, so don't make it too long. And then what I like to do is take my needle, or my hook, and just kind of use it to push the stuffing around the middle so that it looks a little bit nicer. And then, of course, our final step, unless you're embroidering the eyes, is to close the bottom hole. So taking my sewing needle, thread your needle, and then grab all of the front loops and pull it closed. And then once you pull it closed, I like to secure this end by picking up one of these loops that are kind of tucked into the stitches and creating a little knot in the same way that we secured our magic ring or your chain 2 method. And then I'm going to go ahead and weave this in. And I'm just going to leave this end anywhere that I feel like the plushie could have used a little bit more stuffing. And then I'm going to tuck it in with my scissors. Now you can cut the end if you want, and depending on your yarn you might have to, but I personally prefer to avoid scrap yarn wherever I can. So I'll weave that right in. And then again, adjust the stuffing as needed. And here you have your bee. So now what's left is to embroider the eyes. Now I won't be showing this because I've shown this plenty of times on my channel. I also have a full video on embroidering eyes, but I just do this very simply with some black yarn and create a couple of loops and then secure the ends and weave them in. I'll have all of those videos linked in the description if you're interested in them, but that is how you crochet a little mini bee. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to crochet a bee, and I'm absolutely certain it's better than the first tutorial I released. So maybe I'll have to make that one disappear so you guys can't find it later, but I'm just kidding. I really don't mind if you find it or watch it. I do recall that Arthur, or my little buddy, he was involved in that video because he has no boundaries, and yes, he's a cat, so if you want to see that, you can check it out. That is about all I have for you in today's tutorial. If you have any suggestions for patterns or videos, just let me know, and also if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them as quick as I can. Thank you so much for watching to the end, and if you did make bees, let me know in the comments what colors you picked and yarn and all the fun stuff. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you around. Bye!